But to get free, it's not about things disappearing. It's actually about waking up to what things really are.
Welcome to the Found Free Podcast. I am your host, Sabia Wade. We are here to talk about all things spirituality, activism, self-care, and entrepreneurship. I'm super excited because we have a very special guest. So, I got introduced to you through Love and Rage, the path of liberation through anger.
It's a beautiful path as well.
Can you tell me about the inspiration for this book?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always important to say that I didn't actually want to write that book. Because I was over anger. I was like, I don't need to deal with this. I had already done my work around anger. But really, that book, it came as a reaction to the election of Donald Trump in 2016. And then everyone was pissed off.
Very.
Right? So everyone's question always was like, how do I deal with the anger? Like the anger. And I kept saying it's not about the anger, right? It's about what's beneath the anger. And I kept saying it over and over and over and over again until finally one day, I was at Columbia Law School with my friend and sister and everything, comrade Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, where I was just sitting, we were giving, talking about mindfulness and justice for the law students up there. And I was just like, I've got to write this book. So I'm tired of answering these questions. I'm going to write this book and then there's going to be no more questions, right? And I was just like, okay, let's actually talk about what anger really is and how anger is important. And that for those of us coming out of marginalized, oppressed communities, we've been taught to distrust our anger, right? And that's kept us kind of embedded in these systems of oppression. So what I wanted to do was write this book that said, you know what, anger and rage are really important, but you have to hold it with love. I have a right to experience anger because I know that I am being hurt, right, by all kinds of things, personal things, systemic things, right? I am experiencing hurt, right? And my anger is actually trying to take care of me. Right? But I keep reacting to the anger, and it's not helpful. It's actually depleting, reacting to anger. And anger is just asking to be held, right? To be an energy that's there for us to channel into doing the work of getting free from suffering, dismantling, disrupting systems of oppression and violence, right? But not just as something that we're reacting to because we don't know how to feel it. We can't hold it, or nor can we get to the heartbreak beneath it.
Is that part of your? Because as you're speaking, I'm hearing some elements of Buddhism.
It's all
Right. So is that part of with the way that you grew up and the traditions that you grew up in?
Yeah.
Is that also this anger and love and mix also a reason why you chose Buddhism?
Mm-hmm. I ended up choosing Buddhism because it was answering all the questions that I had. Very much like you, I was sitting in church going, but this isn't the whole truth, right? This isn't all. I have questions about everything.
Right, many, many questions.
Everything. And that's why I was so into science fiction and fantasy growing up. Movies, cartoons, books, you name it, I was in it because I was I have questions that need to be answered that my community isn't even getting close to, but there were people who knew these answers, but they weren't talking, and nor was I taught to trust those people. As we were talking about becoming the community wise when the community seer, healer, however we want to use that language, there were people like that in my community, but we were told to stay away from them. Right. Again, another way that systemic oppression functions in our community.
Yes.
Right.
Because it's even taking me back to midwives, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Grand midwives were the people that we trusted with our health, with our family building, with whatever. And then these systems came in and said, you're not qualified anymore. So we've learned, right, that those are not the people that we trust, but how much did they hold for us? And they were just one version of the seer, the wise one. right? The herbalist,
Yes.
the preacher, the
Yeah.
this, the whatever
Yeah.
has been that. And do you think like in
Mm-hmm.
Buddhism, just in
Mm-hmm.
like your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
'cause I think like there is obviously a power thing that comes with like being a lama,
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
right? But are there also in Buddhism ways to be in check of that power that keeps you?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Ideally, when a llama, like, so people, yeah, may have never heard of a llama, but like I
Mhm.
think a lot of people may have heard of like a Zen teacher, or like a Roshi or a sensei or something like that, and so forth, right? Um, but when you get into my tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, being a lama historically, particularly within the history of Tibet, lamas were like feudal lords. You got a lot of power. Like, you got a lot of power because the training was so intense. Like, not a lot of people. And initially, this was all men, young men, right? Having access to this training, this 3-year retreat, right, model. Like, only like adolescent boys got into it. And once you got out of it, you held this power because the culture was religious. Like Catholicism for Catholics, right? And the Pope and the bishops and the archbishops and the
Sure.
priests, everything very similar. But like even in Tibet, like I think lamas had a lot of power in terms of like maybe directing and influencing what happened in a region or in a village and so forth, and you could, get really rich, right?
Yeah, I
Being a
imagine.
teacher, like people were always offering you things and so forth, right? So like then you switch over to this context, into like this contemporary era. I'm Black, I'm not Tibetan, so I'm already
Can't
going to have
tell.
a different I have a different experience, right? I'm way outside the lineage, right? Because of how I am embodied and what I've chosen to direct the practice into, which, of course, is justice work, right? Um, but there's still this kind of cultural, I would say, it's like when you, like how a professor or a teacher would get tenure. And it's really hard to say anything, to a tenured professor. It's very similar. Like, I can just function really like autonomously with no checks and balances.
And I imagine that because of that, that's a good thing. And sometimes it could be challenging depending on who has that.
And who has it,
Yeah.
right? And there's been a lot of harm because people haven't been balanced. But I choose to be held accountable, right? I choose to be in relationships with other like teachers, senior teachers who like keep an eye on me and just like kind of question me about things like ethical,
Accountability.
Yeah, exactly. I choose that. I don't have to do that. But again, if you're talking about liberation and particularly collective liberation, then you're also choosing accountability. You're choosing to be open to feedback, right? And so I choose that. And so, yeah, I can I'm in a way kept in line. And at the same time, my vision about what I am doing is also given a lot of space.
And you also like being in space with you. So I went to a retreat when I first met you a couple years ago in North Carolina.
Yep.
And you didn't know this, but I went there because it was my dad's death anniversary. And you were holding a space, and I was like, and it was like dealing with difficult emotions and this and the other. And I was like, let me go here. So I like really enjoyed myself. It was like one of the best, anniversaries around that time. And I was like, wow, that's like when I really like Love and Rage went to, like, it was a whole thing. But also like I've been in like other spaces with you as well. And you also do a really good job at like knowing that people are coming and knowing that you're having this power, right? But also opening a space where people feel like they can give feedback.
Yes. Yeah. I went through a period where after like a one day event, I would say, okay, who has feedback? Then it started getting out of control. I was like, okay, y'all just write me, y'all just email me. But like people, were just like, and like my last experience of that, it was with people who knew me, friends, and they were just like, they were just kind of going in on me, you know?
Okay, I have feelings.
Like, this is public. Like, this is a room full of people
Yeah.
having a feedback session with me, you know, which no one does. And they were
Mhm.
just like going in and going in. And I was getting in my feelings, you
Of
know, because
course.
like it was personal because I knew them outside of the space. But then they go, particularly one of my, I feel there's three of them, you know, one of them goes, listen, we don't mean to do this, but you have to understand that like no one allows us to do this. And I know it's hard, you know,
Mhm.
and we're trying our best to monitor this, but like you're doing something important by letting us do this. You're making us feel empowered, even though it's really hard for you to hear, you know. And I was like, I get that, but you know, but that's the end of this.
You're like,
You will be getting a survey after the program from now
like
on.
my capacity is still of that of a human,
Yeah,
and
it was,
this is a
yeah.
lot.
And I was just like, I don't have to do that. Like, I don't have to do that.
You
Like,
don't have to
you
put
know,
yourself in that type
yeah,
of space
yeah,
in order to get feedback.
yeah,
But the fact
exactly.
that you, with the position that you hold specifically,
Yeah,
like allow for that feedback and like are open to it,
yeah.
is something that is admirable. And it's also,
Mhm.
I think it helps people like myself to be like, to build trust,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. I mean, liberation is about trust, right? You know, and I came into this, like, I mean, from my, like, earliest years, right, of being alive, I have been so concerned with freedom. And you grow up black and in the South, and you're just like, you're just constantly reminded of the violence against black
Mm-hmm.
people. Everywhere there was a lynching, everywhere there was something,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a segregated building or a segregated restaurant. Like, I just grew up around that. And the Klan was active, like all of that. Like, you just don't forget that you're black and that the world is always attempting to erase you. So I held that trauma, not just my trauma, but the collective trauma, my ancestral trauma, right? So when Buddhism started showing up as something, you know, important, like the first promise of Buddhism, well, the first teaching of Buddhism is that there's suffering. And I was like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 'cause I am
Mm-hmm.
suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then beyond that, you get into like the core practices of Buddhism, meditation being like the core practice, right? And meditation is like, okay, let's get to know your mind and your body, right? Let's actually
Yes.
return back to these experiences of mind and body. That's what I had always been longing for. That was the freedom, right? Because I was working as an activist. I was on the ground, like trying to disrupt and organize and all of that. But my mind needed to be tended to. Like, I needed to understand how to hold space and not react to everything, you know, to
Yes.
move from
Yes.
reactivity to response, right?
Yes.
And that way I started taking power back from these systems, right? And I started setting boundaries because I finally was aware of what was happening in my mind and my body. And it
Yes.
becomes, well, for me, it became seductive in a good way because it was like I was drawn deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding why I felt the ways that I felt, the ways that I was letting like racism and anti-blackness define my self-worth. And I just got to a point early on, I was like, nope, no more of this. Let's do self-love now. And
Mm-hmm.
that became the real path of that kind of that first experience of liberation when I began to feel like, oh, I deserve to be here. Like, I'm,
Yes, I deserve to be here. I
yeah,
deserve like I'm in a good body. I'm in a worthy body.
yeah,
I'm a like those things. And when you talked about suffering,
yeah,
like suffering is talked about a lot in Buddhism, and I really appreciated the conversation about suffering because it helped me to understand that that's just a part of
yeah,
life. Right, and it's not something
yeah,
that I need to be avoiding.
mm-hmm,
Right, it's a part of life. So, can you like
yeah,
define a little
mm-hmm,
bit more
mm-hmm,
about like what is
mm-hmm,
suffering? Because people talk a lot about liberation, right, and like
yeah,
freedom, and but I
yeah,
don't think. But I think sometimes people think that the liberation has to be without the suffering.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the liberation is with the suffering, right? Because it is the realization of what suffering really is and the nature of suffering, right? Because that's what we're trying to get to is the nature
Mm-hmm.
of everything. Like, what is the essence? Like, it's everywhere we're surrounded by phenomena, like everything. There are things everywhere. Like our body is a thing, our cars, our houses, everything, right? So everything seems real and solid, but there's a deeper truth to everything, right? The Buddha called it this illusion, right? But this deeper truth is an experience of the inherent liberation of everything, that everything is just arising out of like emptiness, and that everything is just this expression of energy that our consciousness is shaping into phenomena, right? And we're trying to remember what those core essential experiences are. That's the liberation we're talking about, to wake up from the dream, in essence, right? And the suffering itself is just the misunderstanding. Like, I think this is it, but that's not it. I think I know who I am, but this isn't really who I am. I'm not a who, I'm a what. And that what is an experience of like complete boundlessness, complete spaciousness, complete awareness, right? Suffering, I mean, well, we would even distinguish suffering and pain from one another. Like, pain is just like the sensations that I don't want to deal with, but I have to because I'm embodied, right? There are always going to be really pleasurable sensations. There are going to be unpleasurable sensations, right? Unpleasurable sensations are the pain that I'm always trying to be in relationship with. But then on top of the basic sensations of pain is the suffering. The suffering is just this experience of pushing things away. I don't want to deal with that. And that tension is what is the suffering. It's like this deep uneasiness, right? This like, as one of my professors in graduate school, because I studied Buddhism in graduate school, he would say that like suffering is like, taking a Tupperware container full of like tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, right? And trying to find the lid, but you find a lid that doesn't quite fit. But you like pack it on, you jam it on, and then you put it in the refrigerator, right? And then, I don't know, the next day you open the refrigerator, that Tupperware falls right off, and that lid pops right off.
And it's all a mess.
All a mess. And he was like, that's suffering. Like, you think you're trying to fix everything, but you're actually haven't gotten to the core problem, which is the sensation of pain. You actually don't know how to be in relationship with that.
Yes.
So you're just covering over it. Yeah. Yeah. But to get free, it's not about things disappearing. It's actually about waking up to what things really are. Like, this is what suffering, this is what pain really is. This is what suffering really is. This is what this chair really is. And this is what I really am.
And I think too, that's like a lot of times where activists really, like myself included, like in the beginning of years of like my activism journey and all of that, it was like, I felt like I had to be so committed to the suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And I even had to put myself in pain, right? To be like committed to the suffering.
Yeah.
And it was, and I had forgot about the choice of like, or the consciousness, right? Of like, of choice.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot about it because it was like, I need to be completely in the pain, completely in everything that's happening, completely, to define myself as this activist, or to define myself as someone who cares about anyone outside of myself.
Yeah.
And now it feels like for my liberation, I have to also be aware of how much choice I have. Yeah. And that choice means sometimes I am going to put myself specifically in, right, when I have the capacity, when I have the space, I have the energy, right? And I'm also going to put myself in spaces that are regenerative, right? And it's like, sometimes I think that we miss that in the activism space. It's like there's a yes and they have to work together, especially for sustainability.
Yep. Yeah, because we're so self-identified with the suffering that if we're no longer suffering, who are we? And are we in solidarity? Or are we black if we're not struggling?
Yes.
And if we like transcend the suffering, will we still be recognized? Are we still a member of the club? Right. And I've had to do, so much of my work is trying to like, particularly, get Black folks, but also activists, into understanding that like our struggle doesn't define us. Like, that self-identification with the struggle and the suffering and the pain of all of that actually is depleting. right? Like
beyond depleting.
it's beyond depleting, but we just keep cycling in it because we think it's giving us meaning and it's helping us to belong. But what would it mean for us to use joy as an experience of belonging instead of the suffering, right? Because when I started talking about transcending suffering in my early activist spaces, they were just like, you don't belong here anymore because we're doing suffering here.
Yeah.
And I was like, but this isn't sustainable. Like, I want to do the work of disruption, dismantling systems of harm and violence from love, right? And I want to use my anger not as something I'm reacting to propel me through this work. I want to use anger to show me where the work is, to show me where the hurt is. And I want love to guide that work, right? And that was the weird thing too. It's just like you all of a sudden start talking about love.
I approach things that way, and people are like, "Why are you not on social media, like, going off or like?" And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I really have learned that, like, I have anger, and I definitely place it. And I definitely tell you where I stand on certain things, and when I'm in a space to really, in the space to do that, I'm gonna do that. But wow, when I can go to sleep reminded of like. The community and the love and the shares. And I think too, you might agree with this, is like when we think about specifically the things that we're doing activism around, whatever topics we're talking about, it takes time to get to this fix or whatever we're talking about. And it also takes time for like whoever our opposition is, right? They be committed. They be doing this shit for years. Okay, like if we talk about like the overturning of Roe, that was a 50-year journey, right? On the overturning of Roe, it was bit by bit that this opposition went towards whatever. So we also have to be bit by bit, but we have to be sustainable to be bit by bit. So if we're burning out after 2 years, we're burning out after 5 years, even burning out after 10 years, it's one less person to do this like ongoing. Work that is required to get us, because I feel like I'm free right here in this body, right. But like when we talk about this collective liberation and like actually seeing it in the different systems, it's going to take time.
That's right.
However, you came up with something, as you always do, to help.
I don't always come up with something, sometimes it's hit and miss, so.
Yes, but I think that really like comes into this kind. First of all, this cover.
It's hot, right? That's a shout out to my friend Marcus Rogers.
It's like so you too.
Yeah.
Like obviously it's a picture of you. Yeah. But like it's just so you.
He's a beautiful person. He is a beautiful artist. And my publisher was like, we need your face on this book.
Yes.
And we just went through all these options, and then, we found Marcus. We asked Marcus to do it, and we were already friends before this. And he was just like, okay, here's my vision. Like, without even having read the book, like, he got, like, the first couple of pages, and that's it. And he was like, this is my vision.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Shout out to Marcus.
Yes.
I think Marcus was at your online event when you did a little event. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the new saints from broken hearts to spiritual warriors.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what this book is about?
Yeah. Every book that I write is a reaction, or rather a response to something in the world, right? And so this book, of course, Love and Rage came out during the quarantine, June of the quarantine. And then George Floyd, was murdered, right? I think George Floyd was when 2020, 2021? Yeah, 2020. But like what month was it? The beginning?
Beginnings.
No. It was was it May?
Okay, I was thinking, for me, May is like beginning of year in my mental
calendar. Oh, yeah. I think May is June, yeah. So Love and Rage had come out, and people were really getting into it because of everything that was going on. They came out after George Floyd, right? And so when everything started like reigniting in terms of like just the movement and everything, and this book was like circulating, I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? Because I felt like Love and Rage was handling that moment, And so I was like, but what about the future? Like, what happens when we move beyond this year
Mm-hmm.
into this brand new world, because we're in a whole different timeline now, right?
On all levels.
All levels. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to write a book that helps people manage this like new experience, right? And so I was first inspired by the Bodhisattva tradition, and the Bodhisattva is the Buddhist saint, right? Is our tradition of sainthood, which can be really mystical, mythological as well. It can be really like Jesus walking on water, like that kind of like we're not. I'm never gonna learn how to walk on water. That's how the Bodhisattva tradition feels, I think, for a lot of Buddhists. But I was like, no, the point of the Bodhisattva tradition is to care about the world and to care about freedom and liberation and the reduction of harm and suffering. Right? That's what I want to refocus our attention. And of course, this phrase, the new saint, dropped in, right? Because that's language we know, right? Sainthood is the, like, I mean, and so I was like, we need to be new saints. Like, we need to figure out our divinity and our sacredness, and that divinity and sacredness has to be at the intersection of like justice, both like political, social, or relative justice, and it also has to actually encompass spiritual liberation, right? And and both of those have to be brought together, right? Which is what I've always done. But in New Saints, it just feels like a deeper articulation of what that actually looks like. And I use my body and life to really exemplify and talk about what that integration looks like for us, right? Because we needed to go beyond this performativity of goodness and change. And that's all I was seeing that year is like, white folks were just like, oh,
Look at my black square.
yeah, look at my black square. Let me give my money to black folks. And don't get me wrong, I love that, and you can continue to do that for both of us. Like if you feel guilty about racial injustice, like remember, the money that you have because of the labor of our ancestors, and let that guide you to our Venmo.
Yeah.
To our PayPal.
Also guide you to telling your jobs about us, because they also have like bigger checks.
Yeah. Distribute those resources that really
Exactly.
don't belong to you anyway. It belongs to indigenous and black people, and create the conditions for that wealth. That's just my public service announcement. But like all that attention, everyone's like, we have to support black people. Then by the end of the year, people have forgotten.
I mean, 2024 now, we're looking at people who are like, where's the DEI? There's literal laws that are saying like, no DEI, no this, no that.
That's it. It's the backlash. And I was like, I know this is going to happen. I knew that in 2020. I was like, this is just a moment, right?
Sure.
But I was like, no, I need to write this book to actually invite people into this deeper transformative work of what liberation really is, that you can't forget when it's convenient or when you get bored.
And one of the things though that like I think is really important, and I feel like it shows up in your work. It shows up in your writing, especially in this space too. I see a lot of people kind of, I guess, questioning. Like people say, like, I'm in my healing journey. I'm in my healing journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, does your healing journey have to be separate from just existing? Like, I feel like in my everyday, even if I'm not like, I think there's obviously certain things that we all do, whether it's sitting at our altar or meditating or whatever it is. But I'm like, can healing be happening and the same time that you're just existing? And I feel like your writing kind of brings that clarity for me, but I would love to think about, like, to know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, you can't avoid life and call it healing. Like, it has to happen within the context of living, right? And we talk. First of all, I love healing journeys, right? But there's also this tendency, or a possibility rather, that we get wrapped up in a healing journey that doesn't get us anywhere, right?
Yeah, you're saying something.
Because
Wait a minute.
we can just be like, oh, I'm in my healing journey, and this becomes yet another identity location, that we have to actually transcend. Like, you have to be going somewhere on a journey, Not just be on the road talking about, okay, I'm just going to sit here,
Mm-hmm.
sit right on the road,
Pause. I'll see you in
Yeah.
3 years, 2 years,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. But I'm not also convinced that when people say they're on a healing journey, that they're always actually doing the labor of healing, because it doesn't feel good. I think that's where people get confused. You're like, oh, I'm healing and I'm gonna feel a lot better. No, like for many years I felt like hell. Right. And I still go through periods where I'm just like, I know I am digging through shit, but like this feels like I'm about to die. You know? That's the healing.
Hmm. But is
Right?
that also being a spiritual warrior? Is
That's
that
right.
what a spiritual warrior is?
It's the determination. Like this is like this utter resiliency, right? And that's just something that's very natural for me, resiliency. But like, it's like saying, you know what, I know what the goal is and I can endure this and move through this. Because, like, for me, it's not just about me, it's about the collective. And the collective includes my ancestors as well as everyone I'm living with, in community with, right? So it's us. I'm doing this on behalf of us, not just me. Yeah, I want to feel better, right? But the
Absolutely.
more I feel better, the more I'm able to support and help other people get free, as well. And sometimes we have to, like, I know for me, like, I have had to be very individual,
Mm-hmm.
and isolated in my healing, right? Because I've had to go real, real deep. And I, in those times, have found being in proximity with people or being in relationship with people or just thinking about what other people need, I have found that to be a distraction.
Same.
There's a selfishness that I know people always push back on this with me, but like but there's a nuance here. Like there has to be a period where you just have to say, you know what, I cannot focus on what other people need. Like I need to get deep into what I need, and I have to trust myself. I have to trust other people to trust me and allow me to go deep into this so I can eventually emerge back into relationships, right?
How do you, I guess, like, because I think that's a lot of, like,
Mhm.
especially the audience that I tend
Yeah.
to have, is that hardship of they see themselves as people that are activists. They see themselves as,
Mhm.
justice oriented. They see
Yeah.
themselves as
Mhm.
healers,
Mhm.
right? And I
Mhm.
think with that comes a lot of guilt of if I need time to
Yeah.
myself, if I need
Yeah.
time to take care of myself,
Mhm.
if I'm calling myself a spiritual
Mhm.
warrior, if I'm moving in this direction of
Mhm.
liberation,
Mhm.
getting free, collective, that's right. Like, how do I navigate, like, telling people that I can't be the one that answers the phone for you this time? I can't be the one that picks up the pieces for you this time. I
Mhm.
can't be the one that even gives you a roadmap
Yeah.
to this time.
I mean, what you're really saying is that sometimes people have to be left to do their work, right? And it may seem impossible, but like at some point we have to learn how to navigate. Because what we always say in the tradition is that we're gonna die. Like you may be surrounded by all your loved ones, but you will be dying alone. Like that transition is a solitary transition, quick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still, like and how can you live a life where at least you spent some of your life learning how to be alone with yourself and to do your work outside of the support of others? Not everything is collective, and I know that's
I
hard for
love
people to
that.
hear. It's hard for our people to hear that. They're just like,
I love that because,
not
like,
everything is a collective
it's
group thing. Like at some point I have to learn to make choices on my own. But this is ultimately what I say is that when you start getting involved in real liberation work and the way that we've been talking about it, like you have to choose liberation on your own. Like I can't rely on the collective to choose for me or my mama to choose on my behalf or like whomever. Like I have to choose liberation because this choice that I am making is what's going to sustain me, right? Because when it starts getting real tough, at least for me, when it starts getting real tough, I always remember, and I chose this. Like no one forced me to do this. I am willingly doing this because I understand, what the impact will be.
And there's something about standing in that
Mm-hmm.
choice, even when it's like things are chaos, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something about like I chose this though,
Yeah.
and like I'm gonna push through it, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna look for the people right
Yep.
that can help me
Yep.
do this. But I chose this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's liberation. Is like I'm choosing.
I am choosing. It's empowerment, right?
Okay, so this is like a tangible thing.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice to a person on their path to
Mm-hmm.
liberation,
Mm-hmm.
or one or two, whatever comes up,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
what would it be, right? Because when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about liberation, again,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, people get very like in the sky. They're
Yeah.
like, what, right?
Yeah.
What is some like tangible, like if this is your starting point
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
what would you say?
You know what? I would say first go slow, right? You don't have to do everything on the first day,
You do
right?
not have to do everything on the first day.
Yeah.
Was
Like
it Jesus didn't build the world in a day? Is it God?
God,
Jesus?
yeah.
I get confused. I know.
They're the same actually.
Oh, they are?
I mean, in theology, Jesus
Okay.
is God.
Everyone's always telling me that they're different.
Well, Jesus is the physical embodiment of
Thank you for that.
God, and the Holy Spirit is like the animating energy of
Thank
the
you for that.
Trinity. Yeah, I mean, I went to divinity school, so like, I mean, I studied Buddhism, but I took Bible classes. I was, real interested in this in theology.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, because okay, yes.
You know,
So go slow.
yeah, go slow, like, and prepare in terms of like gather the resources that you need, because this isn't about depletion. And I think this gets real tricky for people. They think, oh, yeah, there's going to be a lot of discomfort, but like it's not what you necessarily think,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of this discomfort is actually learning how to experience wellness and how to like experience the care and the resources we need. So it's combating or taking care of this deep depletion that literally everyone has.
Which can feel uncomfortable.
It's extremely
Like I
uncomfortable.
think, like you said, some
and
people
confusing.
think that it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like your suffering is just because there are bad things happening. Like
Yeah.
I know that part of my suffering
Mhm.
has been there's good things happening and I don't know how to
Yeah.
handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So like going slow
Mm-hmm.
and preparing. What are the things that
Yeah.
people need to prepare? If you were given like a little toolkit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, like, okay, what is your modality? Okay, like what's the lineage? What's the tradition that you're following? Like, it's just not just about this haphazard, like pulling things together, but like what are you gonna follow? Like, what plan has been done in the past, right? And can you get into that plan? And for me, Buddhism was that plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there are many paths. Like, pick your lineage, right? Pick your mentors, and because and when it gets really lonely and isolating, you have to remember that there have been people who've done this before, right? And you
Nothing is
remember them.
new.
Nothing is new, And these days, I am always reflecting on Harriet Tubman.
That's your favorite. That's your girl.
Yeah, it's like, girl, in a way she chose me, because I've never thought about Harriet Tubman that much in my life, but like I really, really began to understand what she did. Like, it just started hitting me, because in the book, I talk about her as being like this really awakened being who made choices to emanate into this world to free Black people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she didn't have to, but she did, right? And what she did to get free, right? And the risks she took over and over again. And so I think about her because that supports me every day. I'm like, well, Harriet Tubman was risking her life all the time, and I can't find any energy to like tell someone no, because I'm afraid of hurting their feelings, or I can't sit with this like, pain or brokenheartedness because I don't feel like it. You remember what other people have done and what they did and how what they did actually opened the path for you. Like, Harriet Tubman made it easier. for me to practice liberation, because she showed me what freedom really could look like and one's commitment to it, right? This is why this is a huge thing of mine. You need your inspirations. Like, I fill this book up with like everyone that's deeply inspired me. And I tell their stories, from Fannie Lou Hamer to like James Baldwin to like so many great, people I consider saints, right? Like, you have to like deeply ingest or take in their stories, because they will hold you. Like, their spirits will hold out. Their spirits will come and sit with you and hold you when you feel like you're completely out of it. And if you're doing this work, the way you need to be doing, there will be times where you're gonna be like, what day is it? Who am I? Where you're just
What's
like
happening.
Yeah.
I hurt somebody's feelings that I should have done it differently, but also I know if I stuck to my lineage and my understanding of life, that was the right choice to make.
Liberation work is like just getting really raw, and that sensitivity is hard to hold sometimes. A lot of times, yeah.
And I have to thank you for being a person that, like, when I'm in my little toolkit, my little toolkit of things, I'm like, where's my llama? Where you at? Like,
call on me.
Like, what's he doing? What's going on? Let me go to the space. Let me look at a thing. Let me read a thing, right? Because, like, I think we have like these, people in the past who have crossed over. And then also like having that, like, people who are in action with you. Right? You don't have to have the same exact focus or the same exact anything, but they're in, that you can feel energetically that y'all are moving towards something together. Right? And you're like, okay, this is, and I look at you like, I'm like, let me see what you doing over there. What's going on over there? And I'm just I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I like tell
like my
everyone
auntie.
about you. Listen, I tell everybody about you. Like, I like push your work to people. I am just very much inspired by you and the many layers and the things that you hold. Because it's not, it's one thing to be a Buddhist teacher. It's also one thing to be Black. It's one thing to be queer. It's one thing to be like, there's a lot of things. And my favorite memory of you is when I went to the in-person event a couple years ago. You was up there in your Nike tracksuit.
My green Nike tracksuit.
Yes, you had some Beyonce playing, and I was like, I have arrived. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Because I was like, I deserve to be comfortable. Because I had to drive from here to Asheville. I had to get up like 5 or 4 in the morning and get up to Asheville. I was like, I'm keeping my tracksuit on.
Yes, and I was like, but it was just like the realness of the space.
The realness,
right, and the energy of the space, and like the way, especially as a Black person, you're Black. I was like, I don't know what I'm walking into. I'm going to Asheville.
Right.
So like,
we never know what we're getting into.
Exactly. So I just like appreciate like how much you put into the world, and I also appreciate how much you take care of yourself. And I hope that you do more of it.
I am. I have to. I don't have a choice. Like, I mean, again, like, thank you for that sharing, because it's helpful for me to know, because for me, I feel so not isolated, but cocooned. Like, I feel like I'm really in tune to things, but when it comes to the impact of my work, like, it's just, I don't feel that impact. It just feels like I'm throwing things out into a void. I'm trying to fill up the void, and I'm just talking and teaching and writing, and it gets thrown out there, and then, but more and more people are coming back and saying, no, like, this thing that you said, sometimes I don't even remember saying what they heard.
You're like, I was here.
Yeah.
I wasn't even, you know what I mean? I wasn't here.
Yeah.
I was in the energy of what was happening.
Exactly.
And the people that were my ancestors, they were speaking through me. So I don't remember that, but it felt good for you.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm not, it sounds like something I would say, but I'm so happy. Right, but like, I mean, really, like, I take suffering seriously, but I'm no longer worshiping it. Like, that's the balance that I'm at right now. Like, I this is important. Yeah, suffering is important. I want to hold it. I want to take care of it. But like, I'm much more than the suffering. And I have gone through my years of just like utter grieving and struggling, years of this, the darkness, the doubt, like just, the confusion, and I took that seriously. I did my grief work, like I did my trauma work. I mean, it's still, yes, more to go, but like I did so much of that.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm on the other side of something, and I want to share that. I want to embody the truth and the promise that if you do the work, you'll get to the other side, right? And there have been many people who've done it before. And if you don't know anyone who's done it, at least you know me. At least you can pick up a book and listen to a podcast and say, at least Rod did it. And that's what I'm talking about, confidence and integrity. Like for me, I don't feel like I'm being boastful or arrogant. I'm just saying I have done this, right? And I'm not embellishing, I'm actually under, I'm not even like going, I mean, I do that in my books. Like I try to take you as far as I can, but like I've done the work.
And it's felt.
Yeah.
And it's felt. And I think like we need examples, and you continue to be one, of understanding suffering, being in suffering, sharing what that looks like, and then also being in a space where maybe that's not the theme anymore. Right. And I think we need that expression just as much as we need expressions of the other stages.
Yeah.
But that there is a place where you can land.
Yes.
Right. And like that landing doesn't mean it's final. But like there is a place that you can land. So how do my people reach you? Like how do they see you? What they gotta do?
I mean, my website, lamarod.com, social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, and just like whisper my name into the air, and you will receive an answer. But yeah, books, like you can get books, anywhere. Radical Dark, New Saints is pretty much everywhere, as I've been noticing, and Love and Rage, always you can find it online from an independent bookseller, as well. I have a website. I also have like a community, a paid community that people can sign up for like just a few dollars a month, and you get access to much more, teachings, and I do groups with people who are part of the community as well.
And you do retreats all over.
All over. I do retreats in multiple countries, and so all the information is on my website. I do a lot of work in the UK. That's like a second home. So I spend a lot of time over there every year. We do 2 retreats there, and I work with a couple of communities personally as well. But I'm here, in the ATL as well, and I'll be doing more here as well.
Yes, I'm very excited. Very excited, very happy, very just all the things when it comes to you. And we got to spend some time together.
That's right, yeah.
So on that note, thank you all for being here. And I love you all. And thank you for watching the Found Free podcast.